Year. Part 1. The Calm Before the Storm. Tom. Carter adjusted his glasses as he sat at the dining table, sipping a cup of coffee while flipping through blueprints for an upcoming project. His wife, Rachel, hummed softly in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for their 2 children, Emma, who was 8, and little Jake, just 5. Their suburban home stood on Maple Lane, nestled among neatly trimmed lawns and flower beds that radiated charm. To anyone passing by, the Carters appeared to be the quintessential American family living the dream. But life had its secrets, ones hidden behind closed doors. While Tom worked tirelessly designing buildings during the day, Rachel carried a past few could imagine. Once a highly decorated Green Beret sniper, she had traded combat fatigues for aprons after meeting Tom and starting a family. Though years had passed since her military days, Rachel's sharp instincts and tactical mind remained intact. She rarely spoke about her time in service. Instead, she focused on creating a safe haven for her loved ones. That morning felt particularly peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting golden beams across the wooden floors. Emma giggled as Jake chased her around the living room with a toy airplane. Even the birds outside seemed cheerful, chirping melodies that blended perfectly with the quiet rhythm of suburban life. But this tranquility would soon shatter. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught Rachel's attention. Through the window, she spotted a sleek black sedan parked in front of their house. 2 men stepped out, wearing suits that looked far too formal for a casual neighborhood visit. One held a clipboard, while the other carried what appeared to be official documents. Rachel exchanged a glance with Tom, who shrugged before heading to the door. "Good morning," said the taller man, offering a curt smile. "Are you Mr. Thomas Carter?" "Yes, that's me," Tom replied politely. "Can I help you?" The man introduced himself as Harold Jenkins, a representative of the Homeowners Association, HOA. He explained that the HOA had received complaints regarding certain violations on the Carters' property. According to him, the color of their front door didn't match the approved palette listed in the community guidelines, and the bushes along the driveway were deemed overgrown. Tom blinked in disbelief. "You're kidding, right? This is about paint and shrubs?" Harold's expression hardened. "These rules exist to maintain uniformity and preserve property values within our community. If these issues aren't resolved within 7 days, further action will be taken." Rachel joined Tom at the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. Her green eyes narrowed slightly as she studied the men. Something about their demeanor struck her as off, not quite threatening, but not entirely professional either. Still, she kept her tone calm. "We'll look into it," she said firmly. Once the men left, Tom let out a frustrated sigh. "This is ridiculous. Who cares what color our door is? It's not like we're hurting anyone." Rachel placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, Tom. We'll figure it out." For now, the incident seemed minor, a bureaucratic nuisance rather than a real problem. Yet deep down, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Years of experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and they were whispering warnings she couldn't ignore. Little did the Carters know. Their idyllic life on Maple Lane was about to change forever. The week passed quickly, but the HOA's ultimatum weighed heavily on the Carters. Tom spent hours researching the community guidelines, trying to understand how something as trivial as paint color could escalate into a serious issue. He even reached out to neighbors for advice, only to find that most were too afraid of the HOA to speak up. Some whispered about fines or penalties they'd faced for minor infractions, while others simply shrugged it off as part of living in a well-maintained neighborhood. Rachel, on the other hand, took a more practical approach. She trimmed the bushes herself, working tirelessly under the hot sun until her hands blistered. When Tom suggested repainting the door, she agreed. But not because she cared about the rules. To Rachel, this wasn't just about compliance, it was about buying time and avoiding unnecessary conflict. Still, there was an edge to her movements, a quiet intensity that hinted at her readiness to protect her family if things went south. Despite their efforts, the HOA remained unsatisfied. On the evening of the deadline, another car arrived, this time a black van with tinted windows. 3 men stepped out dressed in tactical gear and carrying what looked like batons. Their leader, a burly man with a shaved head, approached the front door without knocking. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," he barked, his voice cutting through the stillness of the night. "We're here on behalf of the Homeowners Association. You've failed to meet the required standards. By order of the HOA, you are hereby evicted from this property." Tom opened the door, his face pale with shock. "What? That's insane. We've done everything you asked." The man smirked, clearly enjoying the power dynamic. "Not good enough. Now step aside so we can do our job." Rachel appeared beside Tom, her presence commanding despite her casual attire, a simple t-shirt and jeans. Her green eyes locked onto the intruders, assessing their every move. "You're making a mistake," she said evenly. "Leave now, or you'll regret it." The enforcers laughed, exchanging amused glances. "Oh yeah?" one of them sneered. "And what exactly are you going to do about it, lady?" Rachel didn't respond. Instead, she subtly positioned herself between the men and her children, who peeked nervously from behind the staircase. Years of training kicked in, her mind racing through scenarios and strategies. These weren't ordinary enforcers. They were hired muscle, likely used by the HOA to intimidate residents into submission. But Rachel knew intimidation only worked when people backed down, and she wasn't about to let anyone threaten her family. Tom tried reasoning again, his voice trembling. "Look, we can sort this out. There's no need for violence." The leader stepped closer, his tone mocking. "Violence? Nah, buddy. We're just doing our job, unless you want to make things difficult." Rachel's jaw tightened. She recognized the type, men who thrived on fear, believing themselves untouchable. But they underestimated her. They had no idea who or what they were dealing with. Without taking her eyes off them, she addressed her husband calmly. "Tom, take the kids downstairs. Lock the door behind you." "But do it," she insisted, her voice firm yet gentle. Reluctantly, Tom obeyed, ushering Emma and Jake toward the basement. Once they were safely out of sight, Rachel turned back to the enforcers. Her posture relaxed slightly, almost inviting. Yet there was something unnervingly steady about her gaze, as though she were calculating every possible outcome. "I warned you," she said softly, her words carrying a weight that silenced the room. "Last chance. Walk away." The enforcers hesitated for a moment, unsure how to respond. Then their leader gestured for his men to advance, dismissing Rachel as nothing more than a suburban mom trying to play tough. What they didn't realize was that beneath her calm exterior lay years of discipline, precision, and unshakable resolve. As the first man reached for the doorframe, Rachel moved, with speed and grace that caught everyone off guard. The first enforcer lunged toward Rachel, his movements clumsy and overconfident. But before he could even touch her, Rachel sidestepped with precision, grabbing his arm and using his own momentum to send him stumbling past her. He crashed into the wall with a thud, momentarily stunned. The other 2 men froze, their smirks fading as they realized this wasn't going to be as easy as they thought. Rachel stood firm, her voice calm, but commanding. "I told you to leave. This is your last warning." The leader recovered quickly, his face red with anger. "You've made a big mistake, lady," he growled, signaling his men to surround her. Rachel didn't flinch. Years of training had taught her how to stay composed under pressure. She scanned the room, analyzing every detail, the positions of the men, the layout of the furniture, and potential escape routes. Her mind worked like a well-oiled machine, calculating risks and planning her next move. "Mom!" Jake's small voice called from the basement staircase, breaking the tension. Rachel glanced back for a split second, her heart squeezing at the sight of her son peeking out nervously. "It's okay, sweetheart," she reassured him gently. "Stay downstairs with Dad and Emma. Everything's fine." Her words were meant to comfort her family, but they also served another purpose, to remind herself why she was fighting. These weren't just intruders. They were a threat to everything she held dear. And Rachel Carter didn't back down when it came to protecting her loved ones. With renewed focus, she turned her attention back to the enforcers. As one of them charged again, she ducked low, sweeping his legs out from under him with a swift kick. He hit the floor hard, groaning in pain. The third man hesitated, clearly unsure whether to press forward or retreat. "Get her," the leader shouted, frustration evident in his voice. But Rachel was already several steps ahead. She grabbed a nearby lamp from the side table and swung it toward the nearest attacker, forcing him to stumble backward. Then, without missing a beat, she darted toward the kitchen where she knew there were more tools she could use to defend herself. Downstairs, Tom listened to the commotion above, his stomach twisting with worry. "We need to call the police," he whispered urgently to Emma and Jake, who clung to each other in fear. "No," Rachel's voice echoed faintly from upstairs. "Not yet. Stay put. I've got this." Tom wanted to argue, but he trusted Rachel, implicitly. He'd seen glimpses of her military past during their years together, though she rarely spoke about it. Now, hearing the confidence in her voice, he understood that she was drawing on skills honed through years of service. Upstairs, Rachel moved methodically, securing the house room by room. She locked doors, pushed heavy furniture against entry points, and set up makeshift barriers using whatever she could find: chairs, bookshelves, even pots and pans. Each action was deliberate, designed not only to slow down the enforcers but also to buy time until help arrived. Meanwhile, the enforcers regrouped outside, realizing they couldn't simply barge in anymore. Their arrogance had been replaced by irritation and a growing sense of unease. None of them had expected resistance, let alone someone who seemed to know exactly what she was doing. "She's playing games with us," one of them muttered, rubbing his sore shoulder. The leader scowled. "Fine. If she wants to play rough, we'll smoke her out." Back inside, Rachel heard their muffled voices through the window. She crouched low, listening carefully as they discussed their next move. A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. They might have numbers on their side, but she had something far more valuable: experience. For now, the Carters' home had become a fortress, and Rachel its steadfast guardian. As the standoff continued, Rachel's mind raced not only with strategies but also with memories of her past. Years ago, she had been a different person, a soldier whose life revolved around discipline, precision, and survival. The transition from Green Beret sniper to suburban mom hadn't been easy, but Rachel had embraced it wholeheartedly, determined to leave behind the chaos of war for the safety of family life. Now, as she barricaded doors and plotted her next move, fragments of that former self resurfaced, reminding her of who she truly was beneath the surface. Downstairs, Tom sat with Emma and Jake, doing his best to keep them calm. He told them stories about brave heroes from books and movies, hoping to distract them from the tension above. But his thoughts kept drifting back to Rachel. Over the years, he'd caught glimpses of her military training, how she instinctively scanned crowds in public places or positioned herself near exits in restaurants. Still, nothing could have prepared him for this moment. Watching her take charge so effortlessly filled him with both awe and gratitude. "Dad," Emma whispered, clutching her stuffed bear tightly. "Is Mom okay?" Tom forced a smile, though his heart pounded in his chest. "She's more than okay, sweetheart. Your mom is amazing. She'll make sure we're all safe." Upstairs, Rachel peered through a gap in the curtains, observing the enforcers pacing outside. Their frustration was evident. They hadn't anticipated such resistance and were now scrambling to figure out their next move. Rachel took advantage of their disarray, quietly reinforcing the house's defenses. She used duct tape to secure loose boards over windows and rigged harmless distractions using household items. For example, she tied string across doorways connected to pots and pans. If anyone tried to enter, the noise would alert her immediately. But while Rachel focused on protecting her family, whispers of her past began spreading beyond the confines of their home. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion, gathered at a safe distance to watch the scene unfold. Some recorded videos on their phones, capturing snippets of the enforcers' aggressive behavior. One neighbor, Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman known for her sharp tongue and sharper eyes, approached the group with a knowing look. "That's Rachel Carter up there," she announced firmly. "Did you know she used to be a Green Beret? Served our country with honor. If anyone can handle those thugs, it's her." The revelation rippled through the crowd. Many residents had never suspected that the quiet, unassuming mother next door had such a storied past. Inspired by her courage and angered by the HOA's heavy-handed tactics, a few neighbors decided to take action. They called local news stations, posted updates online, and even contacted lawyers to investigate the legality of the HOA's actions. Inside the house, Rachel noticed the growing support when she spotted flashes of cameras outside. While she appreciated the gesture, she knew it complicated matters. The enforcers, realizing they were being watched, grew increasingly desperate. Their leader barked orders, urging his men to find a way inside before things spiraled further out of control. Rachel, meanwhile, remained focused. She checked her phone for updates, relieved to see messages pouring in from concerned neighbors offering help. One message stood out, a text from Tom's friend Mark, a lawyer specializing in property disputes. "Rachel, I'm looking into the HOA's records. There's evidence of corruption, illegal fines, forged documents, you name it. Hang tight. This isn't over yet." Reading those words gave Rachel hope, but she didn't let her guard down. Her priority was keeping her family safe until reinforcements arrived. As she moved silently through the house, checking traps and ensuring the basement door was secure, she allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. Her military career had taught her many things, but the most important lesson was resilience. No matter how dire the situation, there was always a way forward. And tonight, surrounded by danger yet bolstered by love and determination, Rachel knew she wouldn't falter. Outside, the enforcers muttered anxiously among themselves. The tide was turning, not just within the Carters' home, but throughout the entire neighborhood. What started as a simple dispute over paint and bushes had become something much bigger, a battle against injustice, led by a woman who refused to back down. Blood and Horror, Part 5. Outsmarting the opponent, the night wore on, and Rachel's tactical mind worked tirelessly. She knew she couldn't rely solely on physical strength. Strategy was key. Her years as a Green Beret sniper had taught her that battles weren't always won with brute force. They were won with intelligence, patience, and precision. And so she devised a plan to outwit the enforcers without causing unnecessary harm. First, Rachel gathered items from around the house to create diversions. In the kitchen, she found a box of fireworks left over from last summer's 4th of July celebration. She carefully rigged them near windows and doors, ensuring they would ignite in sequence if triggered. The loud bangs and flashes wouldn't hurt anyone, but they'd certainly spook the enforcers into thinking something far more dangerous was happening inside. Next, she used her phone to call Tom softly from upstairs. "I need you to stay calm and listen," she whispered. "When you hear the fireworks go off, I want you and the kids to cover your ears and stay low. It'll be loud, but it's just a distraction." Tom nodded, even though he knew she couldn't see him. "Got it," he replied quietly, his voice steadier than before. Knowing Rachel had a plan gave him confidence, and he relayed her instructions to Emma and Jake, who clung to each other in the dimly lit basement. Meanwhile, outside, the enforcers grew restless. Their leader paced back and forth, muttering under his breath about how this job had gone horribly wrong. "We can't let some suburban mom make fools of us," he snapped at his men. "Find a way in. Now." His frustration mounted when one of his men reported that neighbors were filming everything and posting updates online. The HOA's reputation was crumbling, and public scrutiny was the last thing they needed. Desperation began to cloud their judgment. Rachel watched their movements through cracks in the curtains. When she saw them regroup near the front door, she ignited the first firework. A deafening boom echoed through the air, followed by a burst of light that illuminated the yard. Startled, the enforcers scrambled backward, their weapons raised defensively. "What the hell was that?" one of them shouted, his voice shaking. Before they could recover, another firework exploded closer to where they stood. Then another. Each blast was louder than the last, creating chaos and confusion. Panicked, the enforcers abandoned their position, retreating farther away from the house. Inside, Rachel moved quickly, using the distraction to reinforce weak points in the house's defenses. She dragged a heavy dresser across the living room doorway and double-checked the string trap she'd set earlier. Every move was deliberate, calculated to keep the enforcers guessing, and afraid. Downstairs, Tom shielded Emma and Jake as instructed, holding them close while the fireworks roared above. Despite the noise, he felt a strange sense of relief. Rachel's plan was working, and for the first time since the ordeal began, he allowed himself to believe they might actually get through this. Outside, the enforcers huddled together, their bravado replaced by uncertainty. "This isn't worth it," one of them muttered, glancing nervously at the glowing windows. "She's got us running in circles." Their leader clenched his fists, torn between pride and practicality. He wanted to press forward, but the growing crowd of neighbors filming their every move made retreat seem like the smarter option. For now. As the fireworks died down, Rachel took a moment to breathe. She leaned against a wall, her heart racing but her resolve unshaken. She knew the enforcers wouldn't give up easily, but she'd bought herself and her family precious time. Her phone buzzed again. It was Mark, the lawyer. "Rachel, I've got good news," he said urgently. "I filed an emergency injunction against the HOA. Local authorities are on their way to investigate. You're not alone anymore." For the first time that night, Rachel smiled. A small, weary smile, but one filled with hope. The battle wasn't over, but reinforcements were coming. Up until now, Rachel had fought alone, relying on her skills and instincts to protect her family. But as dawn approached, she realized something important. She wasn't just fighting for herself or her loved ones. She was standing up for everyone who had ever been bullied by those in power, and that realization gave her strength to face whatever came next. As dawn broke over Maple Lane, the neighborhood buzzed with activity. News of the standoff had spread like wildfire, thanks to videos posted online by concerned neighbors. Reporters arrived on the scene, their cameras trained on the Carters' house as they interviewed residents about the HOA's actions. The once quiet street was now a hub of tension and curiosity, with some people openly criticizing the enforcers while others stood silently, unsure what to believe. Inside the house, Rachel monitored the situation from an upstairs window. She noticed police cars pulling up alongside news vans, their flashing lights casting long shadows across the lawn. Local authorities stepped out, speaking briefly with the enforcers before heading toward the house. Though relieved that help had finally arrived, Rachel remained cautious. She knew the battle wasn't over yet, not until justice was served. "Stay here," she told Tom softly, handing him her phone. "Keep the kids safe. If anything happens, call Mark immediately." Tom nodded, gripping her hand tightly for a moment before letting go. "Be careful," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Rachel descended the stairs quietly, ensuring all makeshift barriers were secure before opening the front door just enough to speak with the officers. Two uniformed policemen approached, cautiously, their expressions neutral but curious. "Ma'am, we're here to investigate reports of illegal eviction attempts," one of them said, his tone respectful. "Can you explain what's going on?" Rachel stepped into view, her posture calm yet commanding. "My family received threats from these men," she began, gesturing toward the enforcers standing awkwardly near their van. "They claim to represent the HOA, but their behavior has been aggressive and unlawful. I acted in self-defense to protect my children." The officer nodded, jotting down notes. "We'll need statements from everyone involved. In the meantime, please remain inside while we sort this out." Rachel complied, retreating back into the house. As she closed the door, she couldn't help but notice the enforcers exchanging worried glances. Their confidence had waned significantly since the night before, replaced by unease, as they realized the law was no longer on their side. Back inside, Rachel joined Tom and the kids in the living room. Emma and Jake clung to their parents, visibly shaken but reassured by their mother's presence. "Is it almost over, Mom?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "It will be soon," Rachel promised, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Everything's going to be okay." Outside, tensions escalated when one of the enforcers, a wiry man with sharp features, decided to take matters into his own hands. Frustrated and humiliated, he slipped away from the group, determined to prove himself by breaching the house alone. Using the chaos of reporters and police activity as cover, he crept around to the side of the property, searching for an unguarded entry point. Rachel spotted him instantly through a gap in the curtains. Her instincts kicked in, and she moved, swiftly, positioning herself in the hallway leading to the kitchen. When the enforcer tried to pry open a window, she triggered one of her traps, a string tied to a stack of pans that crashed to the floor with a loud clatter. Startled, the man froze, his eyes darting around nervously. Before he could react further, Rachel stepped into view, her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. "You really shouldn't have come in here," she said evenly, her voice cutting through the silence. The enforcer hesitated, clutching a crowbar defensively. "I'm not leaving without finishing the job," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Rachel didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him carefully, noting the sweat on his brow and the slight tremor in his hands. Years of military training had taught her how to read people, and this man was scared. "I don't want to hurt you," she continued, her tone firm but not threatening. "But if you force me to, I will. Leave now, and walk away while you still can." Or no, a moment. Neither of them moved. Then, slowly, the enforcer lowered the crowbar, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He backed away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he'd come. When Rachel returned to the living room, Tom looked at her questioningly. "What happened?" "He gave up," she replied simply, sitting beside him. "It's over." Moments later, the police announced that the enforcers were being detained pending investigation. Neighbors cheered, applauding Rachel's bravery and resilience. For the first time in hours, the Carters allowed themselves to breathe freely again. Justice might not have been fully served yet, but it was closer than ever. The days following the standoff were a whirlwind of activity. Local authorities launched an investigation into the HOA's practices, uncovering layers of corruption that shocked even the most skeptical residents. It turned out that the association had been using intimidation tactics for years, imposing arbitrary fines and evicting families who couldn't or wouldn't comply with their ever-growing list of rules. The enforcers hired to intimidate the Carters were part of a private security firm with questionable credentials, operating outside legal boundaries. Rachel's role in exposing the HOA became public knowledge after neighbors shared videos and stories about her bravery. Her past as a Green Beret sniper came to light, earning admiration from across the community. Veterans organizations praised her courage, while local news outlets hailed her as a symbol of resilience against injustice. Though Rachel didn't seek attention, she accepted it graciously, knowing it helped bring awareness to the broader issue of HOA overreach. For Tom, the revelations were both shocking and empowering. He'd always admired Rachel's strength, but seeing her step into action had deepened his respect for her in ways he never imagined. "You're incredible," he told her one evening as they sat together on the porch, watching Emma and Jake play in the yard. Rachel smiled softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I just did what I had to do. We protect each other. That's what family is all about." As the dust settled, the HOA dissolved under mounting pressure. Its leaders faced criminal charges for fraud and abuse of power, while the enforcers were banned from working in law enforcement or private security roles. Neighbors celebrated the victory, organizing a block party to honor the Carters and thank them for standing up when others hadn't dared. But despite the newfound peace, the Carters decided it was time for a fresh start. The events of the past week had left emotional scars, and though their home on Maple Lane was safe again, memories lingered. They listed the house for sale and began searching for a quieter neighborhood, one where such conflicts wouldn't arise. "Are you sure about this?" Tom asked Rachel one night as they packed boxes in the living room. She nodded, folding a blanket neatly before setting it aside. "It's not running away, Tom. It's choosing a better life for us. For the kids. This place will always remind me of what happened here no matter how much we try to move on. Tom understood. Their decision wasn't about fear, it was about hope. Together, they loaded their belongings into a moving truck, waving goodbye to neighbors who had become friends during the ordeal. Their new home was nestled in a small town surrounded by rolling hills and open skies, a stark contrast to the tightly controlled suburb they'd left behind. On their first morning there, Rachel stood on the front porch sipping coffee as sunlight spilled across the horizon. "It feels peaceful," Tom said, joining her with 2 steaming mugs. "It does," Rachel agreed, taking a sip. "And safe." Emma and Jake ran through the grass, laughing as they chased butterflies. For the first time in weeks, the air felt light, free of tension. As the months passed, the Carters settled into their new routine. Rachel continued homeschooling the kids, teaching them lessons not only from books, but also about kindness, resilience, and standing up for what's right. Tom threw himself into work designing structures that blended seamlessly with nature, a reflection of their desire for simplicity. Though they occasionally thought about Maple Lane, the Carters knew they'd made the right choice. Their journey had tested them in ways they never expected, but it had also brought them closer together. They emerged stronger, not because of what they endured, but because of how they faced it. One evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, Jake looked up at his mom with wide eyes. "Mom, are you still a superhero?" Rachel chuckled, ruffling his hair affectionately. "No, sweetheart. I'm just your mom, but if you ever need me to be a superhero, I'll always be here." And with that, the Carters embraced their new beginning, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together.